Was I wrong for completely cutting off my parents after they refused to pay a mere $10,000 for my life-saving surgery, only for my incredible grandma to step in and humiliate them in the most public way possible? You tell me. Imagine being on the brink of needing a critical operation, one that could literally save your life or significantly improve its quality, and having your own parents, who are more than capable financially, tell you flat out, "No, we're not paying for that." It sounds like something out of a bad movie, right? But that was my reality, and the emotional scar it left runs far deeper than any physical one I might have endured. This isn't just about money. It's about betrayal, about love, and about finding out who truly has your back when the chips are down. I'm still grappling with the aftermath, trying to figure out if my reaction was justified or if I let anger get the better of me. Let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Alex, and for most of my life I believed I had a relatively normal, if not somewhat privileged, upbringing. My parents, Robert and Sarah, were both successful professionals. My dad, Robert, was a senior partner at a law firm, and my mom, Sarah, was a high-ranking executive in marketing. They lived in a beautiful house, drove luxury cars, and never really seemed to want for anything. I was an only child, and while they provided me with everything materialistically, private school, designer clothes, extravagant vacations, there was always an underlying coolness to our relationship, a sense that I was more of an accessory to their perfect life than a cherished individual. Affection was doled out sparingly, and praise felt earned rather than freely given. My grandma on my mom's side, Alina, was a stark contrast. She was warmth personified. A retired art teacher, she lived in a charming, slightly cluttered house filled with vibrant paintings, handmade pottery, and the comforting scent of freshly baked cookies. Grandma Alina was my refuge, my confidant. She taught me how to paint, how to bake, and most importantly, how to feel truly loved and seen. She was the one who listened intently to my childhood woes, celebrated my small victories, and comforted me through every scraped knee and broken heart. My parents always seemed to tolerate her, seeing her as a bit eccentric, but they never actively discouraged our bond, perhaps because it meant she often took me off their hands. Life went on, and I entered my early 20s, juggling university and a part-time job. That's when the pain started. It began as a dull ache in my side, gradually escalating to sharp, debilitating spasms that would leave me doubled over, gasping for breath. I tried to ignore it at first, attributing it to stress or poor posture, but the pain became relentless. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it anymore. After numerous doctor visits, tests, and scans, the diagnosis came: a rare, severe form of endometriosis that had spread aggressively, necessitating immediate surgical intervention. My gynecologist explained it clearly. Without the surgery, my quality of life would continue to plummet, and there was a significant risk of further complications, including permanent organ damage and infertility. The estimated cost for the specialized surgery, even with my decent insurance, was $10,000 out of pocket. I was terrified. $10,000 felt like an insurmountable mountain. I was a student living paycheck to paycheck. My first instinct, naturally, was to go to my parents. I remember sitting them down in their pristine living room, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across their expensive Persian rug. I laid out the medical reports, the doctor's recommendations, the urgency of the situation. I explained the pain, the fear, the prognosis. I even had a detailed breakdown of the costs. My voice trembled as I asked for their help, for the $10,000. I wasn't asking for a handout, I explained, but a loan, or even just their support in navigating this terrifying new chapter. My dad, Robert, cleared his throat. He looked at my mom, Sarah, who remained impassive, her gaze fixed on a distant point. "Alex," he began, his tone devoid of any discernible emotion, "we've discussed this. Your mother and I have decided that this is your responsibility. You're an adult now. We've provided you with an excellent education, a stable home, and every opportunity. It's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet." My jaw dropped. "My responsibility," I choked out, my voice rising. "This is a medical emergency. It's not like I bought a new car or went on an extravagant trip. This is for my health, potentially my future fertility." My mom finally spoke, her voice cool and detached. "We believe in personal accountability, Alex. If you're struggling, perhaps you should work more hours or look into a payment plan. There are options. We're not going to simply hand over money every time you face a challenge." She then added, almost as an afterthought, "Besides, we just put down a deposit on a new vacation home in Aspen. Our finances are a bit stretched at the moment." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Stretched? You're building a vacation home, and you can't spare $10,000 to help your own child avoid permanent health issues. The words felt hollow as they left my mouth, bouncing off their unyielding facades. It wasn't just the refusal, it was the coldness, the utter lack of empathy. They looked at me as if I were a stranger asking for a handout, not their child in distress. I left their house that day in a daze, tears blurring my vision. The physical pain was nothing compared to the searing emotional wound they had inflicted. It felt like a punch to the gut, a complete invalidation of my worth to them. I called my best friend, Maya, and sobbed into the phone, recounting the whole heartbreaking exchange. Maya was furious. "Alex, that's just... I can't even. They're monsters." But who else could I turn to? I didn't want to burden Grandma Aliner. She lived on a modest pension, and I knew she didn't have that kind of money. I started researching every avenue possible: medical charities, payment plans with the hospital, even contemplating a crowdfunding campaign, which felt humiliating. The clock was ticking, and the pain was worsening. I was missing classes, struggling at work, and the constant fear was a heavy cloak draped over every aspect of my life. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. My parents had effectively abandoned me at my most vulnerable. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have begged your parents? Would you have tried to make them see reason? Or would you have simply walked away and found another path, even if it meant cutting ties completely? I tried to suppress the anger and resentment, but it simmered beneath the surface. A constant low flame. A week after the devastating conversation with my parents, I was at Grandma Aliner's for our weekly baking session. I tried to act normal, but my pain and distress were evident. She kept giving me worried glances. Finally, as we were pulling a fresh batch of apple pies from the oven, she gently placed a hand on my arm. "Alex, my dear, what's wrong? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." The dam broke. I burst into tears, explaining everything: the diagnosis, the need for surgery, and my parents' callous refusal. I recounted their exact words, the lack of warmth, the focus on their new vacation home. Grandma listened, her expression shifting from concern to quiet fury. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a long moment. She just held me, stroking my hair, letting me cry it all out. Then she pulled away, her eyes sparkling with a fierce determination I hadn't seen before. "Don't you worry, my love. We will figure this out. You are my granddaughter, and I won't let you suffer." I tried to protest, to tell her not to worry, that I'd find a way, but she simply shook her head. "No, your parents may have forgotten their duties, but I haven't forgotten mine. Family takes care of family." The next few days were a blur. Grandma Aliner, with a quiet efficiency that belied her sweet demeanor, called the hospital, spoke to the billing department, and even tracked down a social worker to discuss options. She then did something that completely floored me. She started selling her art. Not just the small pieces she occasionally gifted, but some of her more prized, larger canvases she had kept for years, her personal treasures. She hosted an impromptu art sale at her house, inviting friends, neighbors, and anyone she knew who appreciated art. She didn't tell them why, only that it was for a special cause. Word spread quickly through our small community. Grandma Aliner was well loved, and people showed up in droves, buying her beautiful paintings, sculptures, and even some of her handmade jewelry. It was heartwarming, but also incredibly painful to watch her part with pieces that held so much sentimental value for her. I pleaded with her to stop, to let me find another way, but she was resolute. "These are just things, Alex. Your health, your future, that is what truly matters." The final amount was still a little short, even after the sale. That's when Grandma Aliner made her biggest move. My parents were hosting their annual lavish summer garden party, a highly anticipated event in their social circle. It was an extravagant affair with caterers, a string quartet, and an endless flow of expensive champagne. Everyone who was anyone in their professional and social spheres would be there. I had planned to skip it, but Grandma insisted I come, saying she had a surprise. I arrived with Grandma, feeling incredibly uncomfortable and anxious. My parents greeted us with their usual polite but distant smiles, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing. The party was in full swing when Grandma Alina, holding a microphone she'd somehow convinced the bandleader to let her use, tapped a champagne flute for attention. A hush fell over the crowd. My parents exchanged confused glances, looking annoyed. "Good evening, everyone," Grandma's voice, though soft, carried clearly across the manicured lawn. "I apologize for interrupting such a lovely party, but there's something important I need to share with you all." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, finally resting pointedly on my parents. "As many of you know, my wonderful granddaughter, Alex, has been struggling with a very serious health issue. She requires urgent surgery for aggressive endometriosis, a condition that has caused her immense pain and could have long-term consequences, including infertility, if not addressed promptly." My parents' faces turned ashen. I felt my own cheeks flush with a mix of embarrassment and rising indignation. "The total cost for this critical, life-saving surgery," Grandma continued, her voice gaining strength, "after insurance is $10,000, a sum that, for many of us, would be difficult to come by on short notice. Alex, being the independent and hardworking young woman she is, tried to find every avenue to fund this herself." She then looked directly at my parents, her eyes holding an unwavering, piercing intensity. "Unfortunately, her parents, Robert and Sarah, felt that this was Alex's personal responsibility and declined to contribute to her medical care, stating they were a bit stretched due to a recent deposit on a new vacation home in Aspen." A collective gasp went through the crowd. You could hear a pin drop. My parents looked like statues, their mouths agape, their eyes wide with shock and humiliation. Whispers erupted, quickly growing into a low murmur of disbelief and disapproval. Grandma Alina wasn't done. "So, in light of this situation, and because I believe that family above all should support each other in times of need, I decided to do what I could. I held an art sale, parting with many of my beloved paintings to raise funds for Alex's surgery. And thanks to the incredible generosity of many of you here tonight, we have raised almost the entire amount." She then produced a crisp, new check from her purse. "And this final check for the remaining $2,000 comes from me. So, Alex, my dear," she said, turning to me, her eyes brimming with love, "your surgery is fully funded. Go get healthy. I love you." She handed me the check, and then in a defiant flourish, she walked over to my parents, handed my dad a business card, and said, "Robert, Sarah, perhaps you could consider sending the $10,000 to a charity that supports young adults facing medical crises. It might do some good." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by a few nervous coughs. Then, a wave of applause erupted, starting softly and growing into a thunderous ovation. People rushed forward to hug Grandma, to congratulate me, and to offer words of support. My parents, meanwhile, stood frozen, utterly mortified. Their perfect party had been spectacularly hijacked and turned into a public shamming of epic proportions. I had my surgery a few weeks later. It was successful, and I'm now on the road to recovery, the pain significantly reduced. But the emotional scars from my parents' actions and the profound love shown by my grandma have changed everything. I haven't spoken to my parents since that night. They've tried to call, to text, sending increasingly desperate messages about how humiliated they were and how I ruined their reputation. I haven't responded. How could I? They chose a vacation home over my health. They chose their image over their child. My grandma, on the other hand, is my hero. She not only saved me physically, but showed me what unconditional love truly looks like. She reminded me that blood doesn't always mean family, and that sometimes the people who show up for you are the ones you least expect. I'm focusing on my recovery, on my studies, and on building a future with the people who genuinely care about me. I've realized that cutting ties, though painful, was necessary for my own well-being. It was an act of self-preservation. I still wonder if I was too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I remember the coldness in their eyes, the dismissive wave of their hands, and the casual cruelty of their words. And I know, deep down, that I made the right decision for me. So tell me, was I wrong? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you were on my side, and subscribe for more stories like this. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll see you all in the next story.